to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Jesse Roberts, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Spanish Fork High School. Welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Appreciate it, Hutch.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience across the U.S. and around the world where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago, you had Darren Jenkins on. Excuse me, pardon my voice. I grew up in Tabiona, Utah, a 1A school, and that's where I went to all my elementary, high school years, except for 1 year. After I graduated from Tabby, I went on an LDS mission to West Africa. I served in Ghana and Sierra Leone. I came back and I went on attended BYU, where I met my wife, and we got married. I knew I was going to be a teacher at that point, and so to afford teaching, I became a wildland firefighter in the summer. And
it pays better than being a teacher.
It did at the start, for sure. And so I got into that. I applied for an internship at Spanish Fork High School, Spanish Fork Junior High School. And then they decided to keep me around after that. And I've been in the Nebo School District ever since. I teach history and government still half-time. And then I have been AD for 3.5 years now.
Excellent. So let me ask you about the famous line of ADs that have come from Spanish, obviously Doug Snell.
Yeah.
And Tim Braithwaite.
Right.
And so what's it like being in that community following those two?
Well, it's it's awesome, actually. Doug was the AD when I became a basketball coach. And he's actually down the list of your questions, one of my mentors. Yeah, they're legends. They're people who have done a lot to create the sense of community that Spanish Fork has, that I really loved when I was an intern, and have become an integral part of me being successful and staying with athletics, because I'm a history nerd at heart, but those guys have been really great, and others in Nebo that I'll mention later who have really helped get me into the path my career has taken.
Let me ask you, Jesse, about, and I think I asked Darren this, I'll ask you the same question. So there's probably not a huge amount of sports activity out in Tabby, because Tabby, for don't know, you have to go off I-40 and go north, or you go over Wolf Creek, which I told Darren at the time. When I was a kid, that was a dirt road. It wasn't a paved highway like it is now.
Right.
So talk about your youth sports opportunities, or lack thereof.
So, yeah, there was not as many options as there are, obviously, in the city, but basketball was life in Tabby, so there's lots of basketball options. I played Little League and Pee Wee baseball. And then when you're old enough, you go into the gym with Coach Gines, and Coach Gines is still coaching there. So he was the coach the whole time I was there, and he's still the coach. And you started with the Mighton tournament when you're in elementary, and then you did junior high basketball. But there wasn't a lot other than that. They had wrestling when I was really young, and that there wasn't enough to support it, and not enough for even 8-man football. But today, I think kids are actually going to Duchesne and playing football and those things. So there wasn't a lot of variety, but you had a lot of opportunity to play what you wanted to play with basketball and baseball, run track, and even they started a golf team when I was in high school, and so there were some opportunities, even though the variety might have been limited.
Well, then let me ask you another question about living out in Tabby. Have you eaten at the Hannah Hilton?
Oh yeah, yeah, many times.
Well,
Many
I
times.
ask you that because I had no idea there was such a place called the Hannah Hilton. And of course, I took my wife up over Wolf Creek. This has got to be probably 3 or 4 years ago over Labor Day.
Yeah,
Reminiscing about when I went up there and camped as a kid when it was a dirt road, and now it's this
right.
nice highway. And I'm going, look at this.
Yeah, yeah.
So we
It's an
stopped
awesome.
at the Hannah Hilton, and there were some bikers that came by, and my goodness, it was lunchtime, and that place was crowded.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very popular bike route over the mountains, and Bronco Mendenhall even brought his crew through one summer when we were out there, and so yeah, it's a great community. It was a great place to grow up. The farm community, the culture of helping people out, and it was an awesome place to grow up.
That's awesome. Let's have you talk for a minute. You mentioned previously, talk about the mentors, the leaders in your life that have made a difference to you, both young and as an adult.
Yeah, so I mean, I tell my students all the time they can blame my fourth grade teacher for the reason I became a teacher. Mr. Davis was started me on that path, and then in high school, Coach Gines, and even his assistant coach, Coach Strebel, he actually is the one that encouraged me to get into the firefighting stuff that I did, and they were it's a different time a little bit. We would watch Jazz games at their houses, and their wives would make us dinner, and it's a little different than what you can do in some of the bigger cities. And so they were just a really big part of growing up. They were religious leaders, they were school leaders. You could get in trouble in all three places at once because they were connected to everything. And those early mentors were really important. And then, like I said, when I got into, excuse me one second, when I got into Nebo School District, probably one of the first people would be Dave Boyack. He was a PE teacher at Spanish Fork Junior High, and he showed me how to have a lot of fun. And then as I became an AD, Dave's really reached out to help. Dave McKee was a principal that really was a big part of my uh, athletics. He hired me as the head basketball coach at Spanish Fork High School. He worked with me a lot. And then I have Matt Christensen, my current principal, who we actually were in the history program at BYU together. And he's just been, he's the one that hired me as an AD, and it has been a really big help in adjusting to that new responsibility for sure.
Thanks for the answers. A side note that you wouldn't know, you mentioned Dave McKee. Dave McKee is my second cousin.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Talk about a small world.
He's a great
Let's
man.
Yeah, he is. Let's have a personal question for you, Jesse. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, other than dropping my wife off 3 days after we got married at my parents' house and leaving for the summer, uh, that wasn't very smart. I'm glad she was there when I came back, but no, when you sent that question, during I was the head coach at Spanish Fork High School for basketball for 8 years, and there was a situation where a change was needed, and I stepped down as the head coach and became the JV coach. And at first, I was like, man, I felt like a failure. Like, what did I do wrong? What can I fix? But Dave McKee helped me through some stuff, and I just decided, hey, I'm going to learn from it. I had no idea at the time I would be an athletic director in a few years, but the stuff I learned uh, from making that transition from head to JV really prepared me to be more empathetic with coaches today in my role. And even though it was really tough for a couple of months when it happened, it's one of the, I mean, I've learned more from that than really anything I've done in athletics in 20 plus years. So tough at the beginning, but a great learning experience.
Thanks for sharing that with our audience. Talk a little bit more about the background and what led up to you getting the job as the AD.
Yeah, so I started coaching ninth grade basketball. I coached junior high track for 5 or so years. I coached basketball. Like I said, I was the head coach and then the JV coach. So for about 18 years, I was doing basketball. Um, Steve Dudley decided to retire. He was the AD after Doug left our high school. And as he decided to retire, Matt called me in and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being involved in administration?" And I said, "No, I don't want to be an administrator." And he said, "Well, you don't have to be an administrator. You can be an athletic administrator." And we talked quite a few times before I thought, you know what, I actually am interested in that stuff. I really am passionate about trying to make our programs and our school better. And so I decided to do it. And when I took the job, it was with the understanding that I would be halftime AD and halftime teacher. And I thought that would be perfect because I really do love teaching history and government. And but the new demands of the job have necessitated uh, not doing that. And our district is going to be very supportive, and we will all be full-time ADs next year in our district. So that's how I got to where I am now.
That is excellent. I want you to talk. This question was not on the list that I sent you, but the Nebo district is really out and up in front. You mentioned they're going to have full-time ADs. I think 5 years ago, that was probably unheard of. Obviously, Everett's been a great leader for you, but I think we probably had all of you at the national conference in Orlando, if I remember right.
Yes, we were all there. Yeah. Yep.
And so that's a great thing. Let's talk about the job of AD and how it's changed since the short time that you've become an AD.
Yeah. So obviously I'm still pretty much a rookie, but I became AD during the COVID. So so I was like, this is intense. And but since we've changed, I think the biggest thing that's changed is the amount of coaching turnover uh, that happens every year with assistants, even head, and trying to keep up with that, especially with requirements that our district and the state put out there. Adjusting to paraprofessional coaches has been a big change because their schedules aren't set up for traditional teaching coaching. And so that's probably been the biggest thing that's changed since I started 3.5 years ago, for sure.
Let's have you talk about your journey with the UIAAA. How did you hear about it? How did you become involved, etc.?
You just mentioned Everett. Everett is our district AD, and as soon as I got the job, Everett reached out to me. Lee Gilly, who's president of our association this year, reached out, and again, Everett is a wonderful leader. Told me, "Hey, like if you want to get involved, here's some things you can do." I'm not a person that likes to. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it 100% or try to anyway. And so he showed me some ways to get involved. He actually got me to Denver my very first year to the conference, and then with Lee Gilly's help, um, Ryan Bishop has been really helpful. He's our region chairman. I got on the ADEC committee as connected to that. Jamie Sheets, when I decided to do my CAA, that sent me emails, talked to me, gave me the spreadsheets. So there's just been really great people to help me pursue and move forward instead of kind of being stuck in a stalemate, wonder what I'm supposed to do. A lot of help. I didn't have to wonder. They show me step by step what I could do, and the organization has been fantastic.
That's excellent. Thanks so much for sharing. Talk about attending your first conference in Denver and then your conferences since then, and talk about obviously having never been there before, what an eye-opener it may have been to experience that on a national level.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest eye-opener was how professionally connected these conferences were. Like it's not you talk about perceptions of ADs down below. It wasn't just go hang out. I mean, there's lots of networking and fellowshipping and that's amazing. But I mean, there is so much professional development at these conferences that is fantastic. I've done professional development as a teacher for 20 years, and a lot of it is not real applicable. It's kind of like pie in the sky stuff. But the thing I really liked about even our state conferences and our national conferences, I wrote things down that I could put into practice the next week when I went back to deal with some of the challenges I was dealing with as a brand new AD. And that's I've been to 3 national conferences now and 4 state conferences, and every single one of them I've literally taken something back that I could apply within weeks to my job, which I think has been a really great part. And maybe a misconception about what these conferences are. There's opportunities to really benefit your craft if you attend.
Well, which leads to my next question. What's one common myth about being an AD that you'd like to debunk for the general public listening out there?
Like I said, and I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, that we don't just watch games, but I think the one I thought of is that, especially we're transitioning to a new building, a new facility. We do not have access to unlimited funds, and our phone does turn off once in a while. So I think the myth out there is that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the AD phone is a hotline for help, but it's all good.
Let me ask you another question specifically about your district. If my memory serves me correct, is there 5 high schools in Nebo district? Or
That's correct.
4?
Yeah. 5.
So you've got Dave at Maple, you got Lee at Salem, you
Mark
got
at
yourself
Springville,
Spanish, Mark at Springville, and
Brian
Brian
Argyle at Payson.
At Payson. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That is excellent. What's the favorite part of your job being the AD, Jesse?
Well, I mean, it really is the kids and seeing more than just basketball kids. My daughter is the point guard on our basketball team. One of the reasons I wanted to become AD was if I'd stayed coaching, I'd miss a bunch of my daughter's stuff because I'd be with the boys all the time. So I've got to watch my daughter come up as from a freshman up to a junior. And then I've met athletes I never would have come in contact with because I was so specialized in basketball. Our lacrosse kids are amazing. We had 3 female wrestlers this year that they had to travel to Salem because we didn't have enough people to have a team. And I mean, you meet those type of kids, which is awesome, but also the diversity of the job that, I mean, you're at wrestling and that's kind of my style. You're doing something new all the time. You don't get stagnant. And then the camaraderie, like I mentioned with the conferences, but our district ADs are fantastic. Like I said, Mark Binks and Brian, I haven't mentioned them yet, but we have a text thread. We interact with each other all the time, even with crazy stuff with transfers and other stuff that happen. The camaraderie of the ADs has been a really great support system.
That's excellent. And I think let me say this. I know others on the podcast have said this. How am I going to say this? You go to a basketball coaching clinic or a football coaching clinic, people stand up, they share, you listen to some famous coach, they share about 10% of their knowledge because they don't want to give away their secrets. But you go to an AD conference and they give you everything. Like,
Yeah.
here's what you can do. And I think that is so true. So thanks for sharing that concept. Let's finish up with a couple of questions, Jesse. The first is, oh no, I forgot a question. Sorry. What's the favorite part of your job?
Yeah, that's the one we just answered, the kids and the camaraderie.
Yeah, duh.
Yeah, we're good
Okay,
on that.
that's right. You did say that, and they kind of tied together with the myth
Yep.
thing. So so let's finish with 2. The first one being, I need Jesse's suggestions for a brand new AD. They need to follow your suggestions in order to become successful. What would your 2 suggestions be?
Yeah, so number 1, you got to find people who do things, like find the doers, and then but don't take advantage of them. I've noticed that sometimes we rely on a very small group of people that will do whatever you ask, even if it means kind of taking advantage of them. So you definitely got to find those people out there that'll take your tickets and that will, but try to give others opportunities, even people that you wouldn't expect would want to do that. I've had to do that as we've expanded our sports and things and added boys volleyball. And I've actually been pleasantly surprised that if you give people an opportunity and help them understand it's not as scary as they think, that they'll join the workforce and takes a load off of people that have a hard time saying no. So that would be number one, and number two, it would be uh, find someone you can talk to about the stress whether it's your wife or your principal, find someone you can vent to because there's going to be some things that happen in those first 2 years. They're going to make you question your decisions to become an AD, but hang in there, vent to people, use your support, and it does get better. It's a very rewarding job.
Thank you for sharing that, Jesse. Let's finish up with this. Jesse, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Yeah, that's that question again. I've listened to it and I've tried to think of what question I don't know. I mean, I'm a history teacher, so there's lots of stories. Uh, um, I don't know why did I become a teacher instead of the other careers I could have chosen? So maybe that's a
Well,
question.
let's have why did you become a teacher rather than stay on the fire line?
Yeah. And that's actually a really that's a good one to ask. So my mom's a teacher in Tabby, and well, not she's retired now, but and she tried to convince me not to become a teacher for a while just because she knows about the pay and all that stuff. And at one point, the fire world would have been much more lucrative. And I had a decision on whether I should become a teacher or stay in teaching or get out. And it really came down to what do I want to do? Do I want to spend my life making money or do I want to spend my life trying to make a difference? And like people who have made for me. And so I decided to take a pay cut for a little bit. Again, my wife is the number one reason I'm a teacher because she is so supportive of everything I do with coaching and when I was gone in the summers and now as AD, I'm gone just as much as I was with firefighting, but she's amazing. She was an athlete and so you have that support and that's why I'm probably still a teacher instead of something else.
Great answer. I have an additional question that's not on the list because normally that's the last question I ask. But you being a history buff, I'm interested to know if you've been to two places. One would be Pearl Harbor and the other one, Gettysburg. And the reason I ask is because I visited both of those places a couple of times and they are so incredibly, I don't know if sacred's the right word, but you just get a different feeling visiting there. And I'm wondering, you as a history person, if you've been there and what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, so Pearl Harbor, no. My wife really wants to go to Hawaii, but we haven't been there. We got to get some of our kids raised first. But Gettysburg, you mentioned that one actually for me is sacred. To be honest, like literally, that was the first history project I did in fourth grade. I've been there a number of times. In fact, this fall I took a group of students to DC and Gettysburg, and yeah, that place. I mean, there's all sorts of stories I have about that place. And I watch Remember the Titans when he runs them through Gettysburg, and uh, yeah, as a history buff, you hit the nail on the head for me. The Civil War was kind of where I started. I've gone into other historical areas now, but Gettysburg is definitely a sacred place for me.
That's perfect. On that finishes this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our guest today has been Jesse Roberts, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Spanish Fork High School. Jesse, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Appreciate it, Hutch. Thanks for what you do.
You are certainly welcome. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.